Welcome everybody. It is Thursday, October 13th. It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in California. Very excited to be welcoming the CEO of Obius, Phil. He's here to speak with us today on the project. I'm very excited. Phil is building a very special project here, actually a very niche project. I have not seen another project going after ERP, and we're going to get into what that is here very soon. Phil, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the people that may not know you, a little bit of maybe about your background, how you got into cryptocurrency, and all the good details that we need, Phil. Hit us up.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And like you mentioned, I'm Phil, the CEO of Obius, and I come from Germany. I learned about cryptocurrency back in 2017. I just bought some Bitcoins for a video game, and then I had some money left on Coinbase, and then I was just, okay, yeah, maybe I will start investing in Ethereum and XRP. It was like top three. Yeah, and then maybe the most of the old people will remember this Coinbase Learn and Earn program where you earn $100 or whatever for just answering these basic questions. So I also did this, and this was amazing. And my background is that I'm a learned software developer. So my training, and so this 3-year period where you learn how to do the job, I did this as a software engineer, but I drifted away a bit because the company where I was working for was an ERP consulting company. We consulted SAP Business One, which is the version of SAP that is for, let's say, middle class companies. So 50 to, I would say, 200 employees per. And yeah, I quickly learned that I love to speak with people. I love to educate these people, and I'm not the, let's say, classical software developer. Yeah, and this is then where I continue to work after I completed my, let's say, training there. And yeah, in the meantime, I saw many problems, of course, this everyday struggles and problems you have when you're working with such a software. And yeah, then I thought about, okay, maybe you can combine this with crypto. And I came up with the idea of Obius, a blockchain-based ERP software, which contains the symbiosis of, let's say, the traditional ERP, which we know and which I did for many years. And yeah, this, let's say, crazy new Web3 evolution that is upon us, and that is going to revolutionize the way we use the internet.
So Phil, let's do this, because I had no idea what ERP was, right? Before I had to go through your white paper and everything like that. On the easiest scale, why don't you explain what ERP is for everybody so we can all understand what exactly is you're doing here?
Totally. So in general, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and is basically a software that keeps track of most or nearly every process and resource. For example, every company sells a product, either it's a physical item or a service, and this all produces some kind of workflow. So every company has to, for example, write invoices in order to get money from other clients and parties. So let's just take this basic example of invoice writing. You create these invoices in your ERP software. You just enter the informations, for example, to the customer and what you're billing them. And then they pay you this amount of money. This comes to your bank account. You have to keep track of this process that this money came into your company. And yeah, you can imagine that it's not only this, let's say, document management on the invoicing side, but of course, every company has human resources they have to manage. Every company needs to pay their employees, for example, or the most companies, for example, in the traditional space, they have, for example, a physical product they have to keep track of in their warehouse. They have to store this somewhere and then they ship it. So there are many processes in the company in general, and I think everybody who works knows some of these processes. And yeah, this is all ERP. There's another term which is customer relationship management, which is also maybe a part of ERP. It's a thing of definition, but it's also that you, for example, run marketing, run campaigns to target more people and a larger audience, for example. And yeah, basically every transaction a company does is under the term of enterprise resource management.
And Phil, do you guys do something with supply chain issues or problems? I thought I saw in the white paper something about scanners for supply chain. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Totally. So in general, for example, or maybe just to see how this fits into the Web3 thing first, it's like that the most companies that work in the traditional space, they have this classical physical product. They're selling whatever, I don't know, cars, for example. But the companies in the Web3 space, they have other resources than the traditional companies. For example, they have their own native token. Maybe they even pay their employees in their native token. So it's also some kind of payroll. Maybe they have an NFT collection, which they manage. So this is like a warehouse, but in a digital way. And we, in our company and with our module for the digital warehouse, we target these companies, for example, all Web3 companies that have these specific, let's say, Web3 requirements of keeping track of tokens, smart contracts, NFT collections, stuff like this. But they also, at the same time, have these, let's say, traditional modules. For example, they also have human resources they have to manage, and they also have to write standard invoices, which are not very let's say related to Web3. It's just a basic invoice they write. Yeah, every company has also this influence from traditional, let's say, business. And this is what we combine. And what you mentioned with the warehouse, this is also a very unfair thing, in my opinion, because when you work at a, let's say, traditional, normal warehouse, and the package arrives, then you have to bring this package, the information that this package arrived, into your ERP software. And you do this by just scanning the QR or barcode that is on this package. But in order to do this, you need a mobile scanner, which is basically a device that only purpose is to scan these packages. And it's very overpriced, and you are very dependent on this third-party company that sells you this specific device. And it's just like a mobile phone, but in a very primitive way, if you want, but very overpriced, like I said. So we thought about, okay, why can't you just use your mobile phone or maybe a tablet or a scanner in order to do this? And you just, let's say, completely save the money you would have to spend on these mobile devices. And you're also not dependent. So, for example, if your mobile phone is broken, you can just bring it to some of the multiple stores that repairs mobile phones. But if these scanners are broken, you have to go to this party that is selling this, and you're dependent that they do it quickly. So you cannot really, let's say, replace it in this time frame. So you're very dependent on this. And of course, these companies take advantage of this and also charge you very high money for this. So this is just another, let's say, module that we just make more simple and more fair to everybody. So there's no high costs for you as a company adopting our software, and you don't have to buy any scanners from third party or whatever. Yeah, and this is just one, let's say, it's a huge improvement, but one of the improvements that our software brings in the long run. And it's just to lower the entry barrier.
Yeah, those scanners can be really expensive. About 10 years ago, my roommate was a manager at Safeway, and they would scan everything that would come in, and they would order new stuff. And those scanners are like $5-7 grand each, right? And when they break, it's all a mess. Really developing tools that companies can use that are going to save them money in the long run and allow regular workers to use phones and different things is going to really helpful. How big is the team behind Obius right now, and how close is Obius from being to the point where, hey guys, we're ready to bring on some companies and we're ready to do some business?
So in general, when it comes to the founding team, we are 3 persons founding this. It's like myself, I'm the CEO, my CTO Felix, and the marketing officer Chantal. And then we have 4 external developers. Currently, I'm paying this from my own expenses because currently we are in the pre-sale phase and we haven't let's say, collected any grants or money yet beside from the German government so far. This is a part which really takes the pressure from my shoulders so far. But like in the early days, I've done everything from my money. But like I said, it's like 4 external developers working with us closely to bring this to life. And you have to understand that, of course, we want to push this out as soon as possible, but we have different modules, and there's always another piece you could add to this. And my next goal is to bring the MVP so that you can manage documents on chain very soon. And this is not the whole software that will be launching this year, but we will be launching our MVP, and there you can already see, let's say, some kind of proof that it works, and you will see companies that are onboarded to this and that they can actually feel the way how the complete software will then, let's say, connect together these pieces, but it's also more like a, let's say, phased rollout. And in our presentation, we've done a questionnaire, I think it's so called, and we are in contact with over 20 CEOs of Web3 companies and also from traditional companies. And we go to them and we asked, what do you need? So we have a very clear way. I actually have the percentages on here, but the most of these companies, of course, need, let's say, the item or the master data itself, like storing information about the customer and stuff, and this document management, and also this, let's say, digital warehouse, these digital resources, because currently you cannot really manage these in the same software you would do like your, for example, payroll, and you cannot combine this currently. So, like I said, it's a bit of a phased rollout, I would say. But the first thing will be the document management, especially the invoice management, because if you can't make invoices, then there's literally no point with writing delivery notes. So invoices is the first real, let's say, use case that companies are going to use.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, you talk about in the white paper, the ERP trilemma, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about what the ERP trilemma is and how you guys help fix that?
Exactly. So the ERP trilemma, which I described in the presentation, is basically that, for example, when you are creating a company and this is a startup or it's a crypto Web3 startup, whatever, you have to decide, how do I manage my resources? And of course, in the early days, let's say it's a fitting solution that you just, for example, save some invoices in your local folder. If you write something in Excel, for example, if you're 1 or 2 or 3 persons. But when you want to scale and come from 2 or 3 persons to 5 or 10 persons, it's not very easy to manage these resources and these transactions that happen in your company all the time, basically, with like freeware. And you have to, let's say, put things together. It's some kind of patchwork and nothing is really connected to each other. And then you come to the point where you ask yourself, okay, do I need a more, let's say, all-in-one and more complete software? And when you come to this point, you are in a specific market. For example, I consulted some companies that were selling food, for example. So these companies have their, let's say, best practice, normal workflows like writing invoices, but they also have very specific needs on this. And the ERP trilemma I'm describing there is that you cannot combine the, let's say, complexity, user friendliness, and cost efficiency in one ERP software. So either you're taking, let's say, very user friendly and cost efficient ERP, but then you cannot expect high customization options in this, and then you cannot, let's say, display the whole workflow. If you want to have it user-friendly and add your, let's say, complex and individual workflows, then you would have to estimate high costs on this. And if you want to reduce the costs, then, of course, the user-friendliness is in danger of this, because, if there's no money left to, let's say, put into this user-friendliness, then there's basically no real way to make it accessible for every employee. So either way, you're losing one of these 3 points, and it's nothing but really good. And this is because the software that is out there is, let's say, focusing on one specific part, because of course there is something like treasury management, of course, but there is nothing, let's say, that this treasury management connects to human resource and to document management in general and to warehousing. Maybe you're a hybrid company and you have physical warehouse and digital warehouse. I know some companies that, for example, creating, let's say, physical devices, but they also have their own native token. So this is also one thing you have to combine, but it's currently not possible.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of companies that are working right now with ERP solutions is really siloed, right? So one application works for the marketing side, one application works for the invoice side, one application works for the supply chain side. Obius is really going to focus to work on all of that stuff in one application, correct? Just bringing everything under one roof on the blockchain, everything could be tracked, everything's easy to see. Is that kind of what you guys are going for? solving that?
Exactly. So, like you mentioned, it's very, let's say, individual. In this case, that
Yep.
of course we are going to implement the best practice things first, like basic document management and stuff, and also with like basic customization options to, for example, there are, let's say, empty fields or placeholder fields that you can just rename, and you can define the data type that is going there. So you basically can always just enter some more data. But it really gets interesting when it comes to APIs that, let's say, take data from external and bring this also on chain, like oracles in general. One basic example there is, for example, like the food company I consulted. When the truck comes up and you just measure the weight of the truck, and then you just unload the truck, or you take the food off the truck and then you weigh it again, and then you just have the difference is like the weight of the food actually. And of course you can do this manually, but in a very good functioning company you want to do this automatically, and then you can just write a simple API that just collects the data from the weight of the truck and just inserts this into your document. So you automated your workflow basically with like only one API that is very basic. And this is one thing that we want to make as open as possible. I think we also come to this point with the ERP marketplace maybe later. But yeah, this is the, let's say, whole vision to make it accessible for everybody and not to charge any money for these APIs, for example.
Gotcha. So Phil, it really sounds like kind of software as a service, but you guys are working on the ERP solutions. How does the token, QNT asked, how does the token come into play in the ecosystem? How is that going to be relevant? What is the use case of the Obius token?
Exactly. So the first thing that, because of course it's like B2B side, it's like you mentioned, software as a service. And of course the main target is our businesses, basically. Maybe some people with a side hustle can also use this. For example, if you maybe doing drop shipping and you just want a back end that tracks every, let's say, transaction you do on your drop shipping shop, then it's totally fine. But the first main part will be that these companies and the people who want to use the software are paying the, let's say, native fee, the monthly fee in this token, and the liquidity goes through this. And companies have the option to lock their tokens to reduce the fees over time. So you lock for 5 years and then you have reduced monthly fees, of course. Also, one thing to onboard is like that we as a company also can pay the fees for you as a company, because we have to understand that there are companies out there, for example, here in Germany, many startups that want to use the software, but they actually never heard of crypto, or yeah, maybe they even heard of crypto, but it's like they don't understand it really, and it's very mystified for them. And it's okay, they come to us, they pay an extra additional fee, and we just lead the liquidity through the token and pay the fees for them. Yeah, so this is the basic first, let's say, lock and fee reducing mechanism. The next thing is the biggest thing is the ERP marketplace. And this is a place where we want to open up, let's say, the content creation to everyone in the community. So everyone is working somewhere, and maybe, or everybody has some kind of ideas flowing to your head, and it's like, okay, I see this problem, and why is nobody solving this? So I can imagine that everyone listening right now has some kind of ideas how to improve, for example, the workflow in their company, basically, or maybe some smaller adjustments. And every company has some customization options, like you mentioned the modules, for example. This is a very huge point, but we will start smaller. For example, with templates. Every company has an invoice, and these invoices have a certain template. There's a whole market that is only editing these invoices to be stylish, to be very good looking, to look great, and to look professional, for example. I also worked as some kind of invoice designer back in the days. And yeah, basically we want to open this up to the community. So everyone with an idea can create these templates of invoices and then sell it in the ERP marketplace. For example, you're creating a special invoices for a company that sells food, because you just add these specific fields that maybe display the weight, for example, in the invoice. And then you can just sell it through the ERP marketplace. And every company that sells food and is in need of this invoice template can just buy it, instantly use it without any effort of programming it on their own. And you as a, let's say, inventor of these just make passive income out of this. So you can just scale and sell it to everyone who knows this, who needs this. And this is not, or let's say we don't want to have it for only, let's say, development people, but it will be as easy as possible so that everyone with an idea can contribute to this, and it's not limited to persons that are in depth into this, but everyone with an idea can just make these, for example, templates. And then when we go a step further, everything is stored in databases, of course. And there you can just create very large queries and getting every data out of these databases and, let's say, sort them in a specific way. So, for example, there's the thing called material requirement planning, which is basically that you have to predict how many articles you will be selling next month, next year, whatever. So you have to buy it now and then you will sell it later. And it's an own universe on itself, I would say, because it's sometimes so in-depth. And we as Obius, for example, we work together with our advisor Kirk Bourne on this to, let's say, make a standard formula for predicting and making these material requirement, let's say, estimates. But sometimes people are more in-depth into this, and I'm 100% sure there will be people that will put more effort into this, and they will develop things that we currently can think of. Always when you open up, let's say, the sandbox to everyone, then there will be many great ideas that we are currently not thinking of. And when people want to go in depth in this, they just create these queries and they can make it available for sale, and every company can buy this. And in the long run, of course, with modules, like you mentioned, for example, APIs that are for specific markets. And then you can also create these APIs, just put them on sale in the marketplace, and you're making money out of, let's say, solving a problem for companies.
Brilliant. Phil, so question, when you guys get invoicing up, how easy is it or how hard is it going to be to onboard new clients? What is the time frame you guys are thinking it's going to take? A new company comes to you, says, Phil, we need your help. Our ERP is a mess. We don't have invoicing locked down. You guys come in, say, hey, we can offer you this and this. What does it take to onboard that company into Obius and really get it up and running full stack? Is that weeks? Is that months? What kind of planning is involved?
So in general, when it comes to, let's say, onboarding a company from, let's say, 0 to 100, I would speak of weeks, not months. And it's actually that or for example, first, of course, when they come to us, and in the early days, we are more, let's say, close to the individual company and customer. Of course, in the long run, we want to automate this, and it's not that everyone who wants to use the software come to us, of course. But it's like that first you have to understand what workflow is currently in the company itself. And currently, when you would onboard such a new software like SAP, for example, you would have to pay, let's say, a consultant for this. And this is, of course, huge money. Then you will go through some kind of, it's called blueprint, which is basically you go through every aspect, and the consultant asks, okay, are you using the, for example, banking account plan? There's some standard like S03, for example, just to give you an idea there. But we want to automate this as much as possible, and we will be giving out educational information to basically do this on your own if you are a company that has one or two, let's say, relatively smart guys who can figure this out. So in general, when we speak of maybe the first ever integration of Obius completely, then we will have to track the workflow of the company, and then we have to see where does the data actually come from, where is this produced. For example, if it's a web shop, it's very easy because the web shop basically makes all the work for you, and you just have to save it, let's say, and use Obius as a back end. And maybe you don't even have an employee that inserts the orders manually, so you just, let's say, run Obius in the back end, and it just saves every invoice on the chain. But yeah, for example, if you are talking about a company that sells food and it's not that automated because maybe sometimes you have to go on the phone and actually call the customer and talk to them, then you would have to think of, okay, what is the, let's say, least amounts of inserts an employee would have to do to create an invoice that contains all information that is been needed to, in the end, perform the delivery. And when we figured this out, then it's relatively easy to just, let's say, hide all the other fields, and you can just open up the UI and create what the company envisions to, let's say, use.
Fair enough, Phil. And it sounds, once you get everything up and running, if a company really brings you guys in to manage all of the things that you guys talk about in the white paper, they would save a substantial amount of money, right? If they're paying 4 different companies or 3 different companies to manage 5 or 6 different areas, and they could just bring in one company, Obius, to manage it all, that seems to me like it could save a company hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, depending on the size of the company per year.
Exactly. So we're currently also figuring out the price model of this. Okay. And there's nothing officially I can currently say.
Sure.
But I can give a little sneak peek that I saw, and like we also ask how many of the, let's say, percentage of workflow are you currently tracking with such a software? And this includes all kinds of software. So the most CEOs we ask are currently using between 2 and 3 software types or different softwares, and they basically keep track of 40% of their workflow, and they pay this much money. We would charge for 100% of their workflow. So it's, when you want to calculate it this way, we charge the same amount for 100% what these 3 companies in total charge for 40%.
Yeah, no, I got you, man. Why Constellation Network? Out of all of the current standing L1 blockchains or even DAGs, right? You have A0. Why did you guys choose Constellation as the home base, right, of the blockchain for you guys?
Yeah, so in general, I discovered Constellation back in 2021, mid-2021, and I got hooked by the hypergraph hours, and it was around the time where the Lattice Launchpad launched, and the flight program V1 was done. And yeah, we started hearing about the first companies coming out of this, and it was very impressive for me. And like, before I heard of Constellation, and I was thinking about ERP on the chain, yeah, it was very unreal for me, because if you would do this on, for example, Ethereum, especially in these times where the gas fees are like $20 or $50, or I even once paid $200 for a transaction, but it was a very necessary transaction. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this. But yeah, this is completely crazy. And yeah, so this would be not possible because, for example, if you're creating an invoice and this invoice is incorrect, it is not that you just delete this invoice out of your database. You have to cancel it with another transaction, basically. If you do this internally with your local database server, it's no problem with just doing another transaction because there's nobody charging you fees. But when you do this on the public ledger, then you would have to pay for creating the invoice. Then someone says, hey man, this invoice is wrong. Then you have to cancel this invoice again for the amount of money. And then you have to create another invoice. So it's very cost inefficient, of course. Yeah. So when I first heard about the, let's say, feeless transaction, I was like, okay, man, how is this possible? And to be honest, up to this point, I wasn't in depth in the tech of all blockchains as I'm now. So yeah, I was first off, okay, man, this is unreal. How can this be? Yeah, and of course, we have looked into other, let's say, blockchains in general, or DAGs, even Hypergraph. And the one that catches me is the combination of the technology DAG and Constellation provide, and also the, let's say, surrounding with the community, and also the flight program V2. The flight program V2 gave me so much knowledge and also helped me really in my, let's say, personal development. And one thing we always, let's say, hold up or keep up is like that we are not, let's say, exclusive on, for example, Constellation and DAG. So we support we will be supporting many chains in the long run. And it's not that it's only on Constellation. And if there's a chain that has same capabilities and also, let's say, allows near zero fee transactions so that it's like worth to do on the chain, then we are totally up to do this because we want to keep and capture as much of the ecosystem and help as many companies as possible. It's not that we are exclusively bound to this, but it's, like you mentioned, the home base, if you want, and it's basically the community and the surrounding that is unique in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear you, Phil.
Yeah,
Constantly
huge shout out and thank you.
Yeah, no, I already knew the answer to that question, but I have to ask for the people that might not be as educated on it as I am. But Q&T Crab actually has a great question here. He says, are you guys going to partner with current ERP vendors?
So in general, this is a very good idea, of course. And like there are some things I cannot tell currently, but the next week, for example, I have a call and I can tell that it's not only, let's say, limited to Web3. And in my opinion, it's always some kind of validation and it's, let's say some kind of positive thing to me when companies are coming to us that are not crypto related and they say, oh yeah, we notice what you do with your crypto stuff over there and it's great and we want to, for example, implement our module in your software basically. So yeah, these are things this is a thing that happens, to be honest, and this is very great. And when the time comes, we can announce things, and there are many things we're currently working on to, let's say, figure out if this fits really, because we don't just want to accept anything and say, okay, yeah, this is a module, we just take it and stuff. This is something these companies can provide in the ERP marketplace. There we don't have any, let's say, right to ban someone in the ERP marketplace. So if someone wants to sell their module, it's totally fine. They just have to plug into the API of Obius. But when we are partnering with companies that are providing main modules in the basic software, then this is a very high standard in my opinion. And I think we will see one or two companies that will make it into the final product as some kind of, let's say, third-party module, but it's basically then onboarded to the first party, like the Obius software.
No, that's great, Phil. Thank you for clarifying all that. Alpha Bravo has a question. He says, what is the benefit of ERP software being on the blockchain? And then, i.e., why use crypto?
Yeah, this is a very important question, and also a very important question we cleared on the flight program, because I'm also not a fan of just putting some existing things on the chain and then it's, yeah, we're doing this on chain and now it's much better. So the problem, for example, currently, or which we haven't mentioned, is some story that happened to me when I consulted a company at Black Friday. And on Black Friday, there's huge demand. And I would say on normal days, they sold around like 1,000 t-shirts a day. It was like merchandise company. And on this specific day, they sold, 100,000 t-shirts. So it's like a huge spike in demand. And after the 200th transaction, the server broke down because it just was not able to handle the sheer amount of data and, let's say, requests. And all the transactions in the queue were lost. And you can imagine that this is a huge money loss. And of course, we made a shout out to the community and was like, hey, please reorder. We had a problem here. But you can imagine that this is only a small percentage really did this. Yeah, this is a problem currently because when you are having a local server or even a cloud, then you have to hit these spike demands. But the normal everyday workflow, or if you, let's say, upgrade your server that it can hit these spike demands, then your server is overqualified for 99% of the time, basically, because you then just pay for resources you never really use. But if you don't do this, then you cannot hit these spike demands, maybe some days in the year or maybe 1 or 2 weeks in the year where the demand is so high that you have to hit it with special or more resources.
No, that makes sense.
Everything... Exactly. So this is one thing currently Constellation working on, like the, let's say, bandwidth and the sharing and requesting of bandwidth. So on these spike demands, on these spike days, we can just request more bandwidth from other state channels that maybe do not have this problem. For example, when you just, when you're selling something that is independent from things like Black Friday, then you can easily provide your bandwidth from the state channel on these days because you don't need this more. And then we can just take it. And just to round this up, every transaction that you do in your company can be stored and validated on chain. And I'm not saying that every transaction is, let's say, useful on chain. So we provide, let's say, customization on your server landscape and structure. So I and my team and I would suggest that you as a company do some kind of hybrid solution. So there is some data that should be stored centralized, actually. Maybe even, I think it's called air gapped, so that you just take it off the internet entirely and just working with synonyms in your software. So basically, employee data, for example, in my opinion, never has to be online, so it cannot be hacked. And other data, for example, these smaller things like every document and every transaction a document produces, these are things that are very fitting for the chain, because you didn't keep, for example, the, let's say, validation and the proof that this transaction actually happened, because currently you can just go to your local server and just delete one record. And like I mentioned, it's not legal, or the software is not intended to do, but you can just manipulate your database. This is nothing hard to do, and even one of the dumbest customers I consulted back in the days was able to do this and just make some, let's say, illegal transaction on there, because they then just delete the track that something arrived at their warehouse, so it never happened, basically. So the chain cannot be manipulated, and everything you validate there is, let's say, written in stone. And you can even prove this, for example, when we are hitting or facing harder regulations. So I actually think this is a time when, or this time is coming, more regulations are coming from US side and also from, for example, here from European Union side. And then you as a company will have to make sure that everything is really, let's say, tracked. And I think this is only really possible on the public ledger.
All right, so before I get into the tokenomics and the pre-sale, Crypto Knight had a question. So he says, for software as a service, is your business using your own infrastructure or server to host your services, or are you using a server from a cloud service provider? Just trying to understand how your SaaS operates.
So in general, like I mentioned, you as a company will be free to decide how you want to run it. So in my vision, we want to decentralize it so much that you, as someone who wants to use Obius, basically never has to interact with us as a team, let's say, ever. Because you basically just need to download the server, the software, and of course you will run it on maybe your own computer or maybe a local server, some data, like I mentioned, and you just pay the fees with a smart contract. And if the fees are paid, then you can use it. So there's no way we as a company, for example, can, let's say, ban someone from using the software, or we can kick somebody out, because there's no entry for us to, let's say, take advantage or taking over the whole thing. And we even could go away, I would say. And the software would basically run on its own. And you only need, I would say, some kind of structure that you can provide, or you can decide on individually. And then you can just run it without us as a software provider. But also, I can imagine some companies that only want to use it, like you mentioned, from our servers. And then this is also totally fine. But then companies have to understand that it's more centralized and not everything is decentralized. And when we go away, then also our servers go away with us.
No, I hear you. And Crypto Knight just added to his thing. He says, I'm asking this because of high availability. What if the software goes down for maintenance delays? Just trying to ensure that we can achieve like 99% uptime on that. So he just wanted to finish with that. Did you have any comment to say about that, what he said?
Totally. So, for example, the maintenance is a very huge point, because we will never force someone to update the software. This is also one point that made me angry back in the days with SAP, for example, because basically they were saying, oh, you're using version 9, but now we got version 10, and if you don't upgrade in the next 2 weeks, then we won't support you anymore, and there's basically no hope for you. So this is one thing you will never hear from us, and from my opinion, there will be an option to just disable, let's say, automatic updates on your software. So when you just once download the software and everything is working for you, you can keep this basically forever. And of course, there will be some, let's say, some shades or some sub-levels that you can, for example, only accept hotfixes from us, because maybe there is something that is a very critical bug that needs to be fixed. Then, of course, you can accept this, but you will be never forced from our side to upgrade. So we say, okay, you're using version 8. oh yeah, then you have no access to the European marketplace anymore, or then we don't support you anymore. This is nothing that will happen. So there's basically no maintenance downtime when you never upgrade, for example. But yeah, this is totally up to the company.
Got you, Phil. And getting into the tokenomics, I'll just, instead of asking you, Phil, because I know it's probably, you don't have all this stuff memorized. I'm on the white paper. So guys, we're looking at 250 million tokens total supply. Allocation goes as follows. Seed sale is 5%. It's 12.5 million tokens. Private sale is 13%. That's 32.5. Public sale is 2%, it's 5 million. Team is 9%. Advisors is 7%. Marketing is 14%. Exchange liquidity is 10. Platform staking rewards is 35. And reserve is 5. Has anything changed in those original numbers, Phil, as far as the tokenomics go of the project?
No, from what nothing really changed about this. Okay. And this is one thing. The only thing we're currently figuring out is if we can lower the team allocation from 9%, like you mentioned, to something around 8 or 7%. We haven't finally decided on this, but I think it will be worth to take some percentage away of this. But I think this also depends on if we will hire maybe another co-founder or maybe another, like from the core team, if you want, then this totally makes sense in my opinion. But if you stay with the same people we currently have in the core team, then I think we can also lower this amount like 1 or 2%.
No worries, Phil. So talk to us about the pre-sale that's happening right now. So people go on, they fill out the form. What are the next steps for the pre-sale? And then that question goes with how much can one person buy? And then what is like the vesting terms on the pre-sale currently?
Yeah, so in general, we announced a pre-sale early this October. And currently we are running, let's say, a marketing campaign in the way that, we have a lot of AMAs, a lot of interviews. We had local press here in Germany where we have let's say, relatively huge article about us. And in general, we're just making some noise in the space. And the plan is to just raise interest. So currently it's nothing binding if you fill out the form. You can just go to our webpage, or you can find this here in the Discord and also on our Twitter. I think you don't oversee this. But in general, nothing binding, and you just fill out how much you're, let's say, interest to invest in this, and if you are an accredited investor, and if you come from US or not. And let's say for the maximum amount, I think there is currently no.
Hold on, Phil. Let's back up.
Maximum.
So you have to be if you're in the United States, you have to be an accredited investor to buy into the pre-sale. Just trying to verify that.
So. Currently, we are just raising, let's say, interest from everybody who's interested in general. There's no real restriction. And if we see that there is a huge interest from, let's say, non-accredited US people, then we will find a good way to also include these people in, let's say, this sale or maybe the next one. So in general, everybody should fill out this form who is interested, and it doesn't matter. We haven't decided on the final round we go. This totally depends on the interest, because imagine the case where, for example, everyone is from the US and not accredited, and these people are super interested, and there's no one from outside the US that is interested, and this would make no sense to just decide on that we go with non-accredited, non-US persons before we even saw what people are interested in, which not, maybe. Everybody should fill out this form, and we will find the best solution that fits everybody.
And then, so Phil, people that are filling out the form right now, this is for the private sale. So you'd be buying it at 10 cents a token, correct? Is that because that's what I'm reading exactly. The white paper. So, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So this is this is the private sale, the biggest part. And this is totally possible. Also, if there is someone willing to maybe invest a bit more, we're also open for these seed sale also. So this is not completely allocated, both of this. So you can also mention this in the last section where you can add additional comments, for example. And in general, I think everybody will find, or everybody can just say what he wants to invest and where. And I think we will make this happen.
Beautiful. And for everybody in the chat, I just started streaming. If you want to go ahead and take a look at my screen here. So if you do invest in the private sale, guys, you're going to get 15% of the tokens that you buy when they launch. 3 months after, another 15. 3 months after, which is 6 months, you're going to get another 15, 9 months, 15, 12 months, 15, 15 months, 15, and finally, the last 10% will be on the 18th month. So it's a nice, slow rollout, won't be crazy dumping, which I prefer. I really like the way you guys set up this, and they're trying to raise a total of $4.775 million before they launch this project. Phil, is there anything, I'll wait for the community to see if there's any outstanding questions, but we went through this pretty thoroughly. Is there anything that we've maybe have left out that you feel is important that people need to know before we end here today?
So I generally like the, let's say, idea of companies in the Web3 space, because if you think about it, it's really crazy how close you are to these companies. So I could never imagine, for example, following another software as a service company on Twitter and having these spaces and talking about their product the way Web3 companies do this. And of course, let's say I come from the traditional sector of ERP, for example, but I also experienced the crypto market since 2017. I know both of these worlds. But in general, I really love the idea of connecting crypto to real world problems and like solving these problems with Web3 and crypto projects. And I would totally recommend everybody to also stay up to date, follow us on Twitter, and be active in the community, because you can really have an impact, because there are many people writing me from the community and coming to my team and telling us their story and maybe also their problems and what they, for example, want to see solved in a way. And there's so much possibility in creating and also, also taking a part of this. And I really enjoy talking to everybody, and I'm very active and reachable on any social media, Twitter, Telegram. And we want to be as transparent as possible on this one. And absolutely, feel free to ask any question in general.
Yeah, so a couple more questions, Phil. And I wanted to give a shout out to one of the partners, right? You guys partnered with Finovant, right? BioFi recently. What is that partnership looking like? Are you guys going to use their biometrics in your technology to make sure that you're dealing with the right people? What does that look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish with that partnership?
Yeah, exactly. So this was actually also one of the first things that came into my mind when the first saw the Hypergraph Hour where Finovant was introduced. So it's very impressive for me that currently I know no ERP software that actually uses this biometric, let's say, verification to secure some of the processes. Of course, it's a bit overkill if you just want to create a basic invoice of $10 and you would have to, let's say, make this with voice recognition and looking into a camera and stuff. I know this is a bit, let's say, over the top. But for example, when it comes to, let's say, larger amounts of transactions, like if you are creating anything below $10,000, you can just create this how you want. And then when you go over 10,000, then you would have to do this face recognition and just, let's say, confirm this with your voice. And this is another huge layer of security that basically no other ERP software currently ever touches on, because they have some kind of structure where the boss of these employees just have to accept the payments or accept the creation of invoices, for example. But there's no real implementing of biometric verification currently. So we were the first one to do this, and especially with the solution of BioFi, having this decentralized, and we know that they first don't store any of this data and they don't, let's say, own any of this data. So it's decentralized, it's secure, and we never ever put anybody on risk of, for example, losing their identity, because everything is secured on chain.
Love it, Phil. I wanted to Q&T ask, in page 15 of the white paper, it is mentioned that sending reports to government agencies. Can you talk a little bit about compliance perspective as it is in a decentralized way? What did you guys mean by sending reports to government agencies, and what does that look like for decentralization going forward?
Exactly. So the, let's say, main part or main reason we implement this is because you have to create many reports that you have. For example, here in Germany, you have to pay, or you have to send many tax reports. You have to count your inventory like every quarter, I think, depending on what type of company you are. But there are many reports that you have to send over and over again every, let's say, 2 months or every month, for example. And this takes a huge amount of time, but there is no real change between these different reports. So basically the one from January looks nearly the same as the one from February. And there's a huge time loss in creating these reports, but there's no need for this to be. So we will be doing something which we call one-click send, which basically then creates the report automatically. You just look over this in an overview or in a preview, and then you say, okay, this is fine, and just send it. And I think this is also very compliant or very compatible with like decentralization, because it's just the standard you have to adopt, for example, from the government. So you're just creating a report, for example, a text report that has these and that values. And if this report contains these values, then it's totally fine to just send to the government. And yeah, like the core thing about this is like automating as much as possible to reduce costs.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Thank you. That's a great answer. I see Crypto Knight is typing one other question here. And if anyone else has any questions, I know some people came in late. I'll post the Loom link for the AMA right after this. It's been a very interesting journey. I think in the last 18 months, Phil, I must have talked with 1,000 different projects, and really you have a lot of projects all doing the same thing, right? It's trying to raise money and NFTs and passive income, whatever, but I have not run into a project trying to fix what is broken in business right now with these ERP solutions. And is there another company that you know of, Phil, that is doing the same thing you guys are, or are you guys the only one? And is that why you guys got 100 out of 100 on the High Def Project Challenge through the Constellation Network?
I can say for sure that in the constellation space, for example, there's no other company doing this. And also in general, there's no other ERP software I know of which takes advantage of Web3 in the way we know it. You can basically count every treasury management company. So I think Ledger, for example, itself has some kind of treasury or some kind of vault mechanism and software they can provide to enterprises. So in a larger way, you could also count these, for example, treasury modules from Ledger as some kind of ERP. But there's no software currently and no company I know of that, for example, does document management and human resource, for example, on the chain. And yeah, we are the first. And yeah, I think this is also a huge advantage because we then maybe got 100 of 100 points. But maybe this is also because I'm a nerd and we really digged into this.
Hey, you know what? That means your precision to detail is what we want, right? We want somebody that's going to pay attention to everything and really trying to shoot for the fences here. It looks like we have a couple more people typing here. QNT posted some stuff. It looks like maybe Oracle's trying to do something. But question, he says, can you talk a bit more about the API on page 16 of the white paper? It looks like the API is leaning more towards developers. Can you just talk a little bit more about that before we finish here today?
Sure. So in general, like I mentioned, and this is also one way Constellation handles it, because in the first place, of course, everything isn't as, let's say, user-friendly or as easy as it can get. So, for example, if you would want to onboard Obius, how it is in the current state, then there would be, for the companies, more work to do to, let's say, just take advantage of these APIs and to actually use it, similar to how it is currently with the hypergraph. So it's basically that you can already provide your own state channel and stuff, but it's not fully baked, if you want to call it. And this is also one thing we're going to improve over the next couple of months and like forever, basically, to just make it as easy as possible. So like you mentioned, of course, it's in the first place when, for example, the software launches completely, it's easier for, let's say, full in-depth developers to really understand and make everything. But over the time, we will reduce the barrier of entry and we want to make it as accessible as possible for every person. And in the long run, everyone, even if you have little to no code experience, you can then also just create these, for example, templates, invoices, and maybe someday even own modules without actually coding anything.
Beautiful. Phil, is there anything you'd like to say in closing? Please, now is the time. We appreciate you coming and explaining Obius. It is a pretty incredible project. I do think this is something that people need to pay attention to. Very often do we get projects that come through that I think can really 100x or even 1000x over the next couple of years. And if you guys do this right, which I think you're on the path to doing so, I think you guys can be very successful.
Yeah, thank you for these words. And like I said, I really enjoyed this, let's say, how close we are to the community in general. So everyone should feel free to, let's say, ask any question they have in our Telegram or here, let's say, any critic, for example, they want to do. And we are very open to this. Of course, we have a very straight up, let's say, and clear path we want to go. But of course, there are some smaller adjustments and some smaller things we can always discuss about. And yeah, we highly appreciate any feedback. And I'm more than happy to talk to everyone when I find the time.
Thank you, Phil. We really appreciate you stopping by and sharing everything with you. We wish you luck, and I've shared the form, guys. If you want to fill it out, it's in the chat in the session that we're in now. Fill out the form, and then Phil, your team will be in touch through email. How does that work? How are you guys going to get in touch with people, and how long do they need to wait? That way, people won't say, "Hey, I filled out the form, but I haven't heard from Obius." What's the process like on that? And then we'll end on that.
Yeah, totally. The advantage that the people here have is that we're like halfway into October, and we will be sending out the first emails early November. So it's not so long anymore, like two weeks actually, I would say. So yeah, like the plan is to make some more noise and some more AMAs. I think we have 13 AMAs coming up this month. So yeah, I like
You're
more.
Busy.
I've already done like 10 this month. But yeah, we're currently making some noise and educating the people. We are working on educational videos about what ERP is in general and explaining everything in a, let's say, very high level way to bring everyone to the same standard of knowledge. And yeah, like you mentioned, there's no real long time period you need to wait, fill out the form, and we will get to you in 2 to 3 weeks.
Phil, it's been a pleasure to speak with you and to understand what you're building and how you're coming at it. We wish you and your team the very best, and we'll be here to support you throughout, man. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Sure. Same to the community. Thank you very much, guys.
And a big shout out to Crypto Knight, QNT Crab, and Alpha Bravo for the questions. You guys have a wonderful day. And this has been Phil, CEO of Obius. Thank you so much, Phil. Take care.
Bye-bye.